What's up, everybody? How are you guys all doing on this fine Sunday evening? For any of you who are wondering what in the world we just watched, that was some sort of symphony orchestra in North Korea, a communist dictatorship, playing Rage Against the Machine. Which, when I saw this on Twitter this week, I think is the most bizarre thing I'd ever seen before. But yeah, pretty bizarre. But you know, it is September 11th, and if you guys may recall, 21 years ago, after 9/11, the media banned like hundreds and hundreds of songs, including, I believe, the entire Rage Against the Machine catalog from the radio. And that was in effect for like months or even years. And here we are now, 21 years later, and the Communist Republic of North Korea is saying, I won't do what you tell me, as they are all dressed in their military uniforms, playing in unison before their Supreme Lord Commander. It's pretty amazing. So
the takeaway is that North Korea has more freedom than we do.
I don't know. I don't even know what to. Were they trying to be ironic or what? It's so weird. It was like I don't know. Maybe it was just like opposition to the U.S. or something. But
yeah, I think it was framed as like opposition to the U.S. war machine.
I think it was just impressive how they all like claps as one. That's just what I was.
Oh yeah, they were all trained to clap right in unison and everything.
That was amazing.
So bizarre. JT said Kim told him to play it. I don't know whose idea it was, but when I saw that on Twitter, I just like the whole world just gone completely insane.
Kim looks like a guy who could really hold the room and unify a party at state convention, though. He'd be a great leader to do that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's been crazy, folks, but and there's been all kinds of crazy stuff in the foreign policy space this week. But you know what? I mean, we really got to focus on what matters right now. We have an election coming up in less than 2 months. And if that wasn't chilling enough for you guys, absentee ballots are going out, what, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, the 29th. You keep saying, voting's in 2 months. No, voting's in 2 weeks.
Yep. Yeah. And the reality, folks, is we got our work cut out for us. And if you've been getting emails from campaigns and things, a lot of them try to spin things in an optimistic way. The reality is, if the election was held today, we'd be losing. And that's really, really alarming.
Held in 2 weeks, we'll be losing.
Yeah.
What's the key? What's the key to winning in 2 weeks that's not right now?
Well, we're not out of time just yet. And frankly, what makes the impact in elections is, the thing we've been talking about for 2 years now, grassroots leadership. And I know present company, and of course, I'm including you guys in the comments. A lot of you are going out knocking on doors. We've been distributing a lot of voter files this last week. A lot of people have been ordering our flyers on the proposals and on Gretchen Whitmer. So to all of you guys that are doing that, thank you. And of course, if you don't want to order them from us, you even can download them from our website for free and print them however you like. Although I think buying them in glossy paper and full color look really nice. JT says, hold them, mail in ballots, and hand deliver in person. Yeah, do we want to talk about how to vote correctly? I think we should talk about how to vote correctly.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, you don't need to get an absentee ballot through the mail. All you gotta do is show up at your city or township clerk's office and apply to vote absentee. And once the ballots are out, they will give it to you right there. You can fill it out right there. You can take it home and bring it back. They're not far away from you. They're only going to be at absolute max 6 miles away, and most of them are less than 3 miles away from your house, wherever it is. It's always in your city or township. So if you're not sure who to vote for Supreme Court judge or whatever, you can go home and do your research and bring it back in. You don't need to use the post office. You certainly don't need to use a drop box or a ballot harvester or anything like that. But that all said, I do recommend voting absentee rather than on election day. Because number one, you might not know if someone fills out an absentee ballot application for you. If you show up on election day and they say you've already voted, you've got a problem. And number two, on election day, I hope all of you are going to be working the polls in some form or another. And if you're working the polls on election day as a poll worker, you got to be there from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. And if you don't vote early absentee, that's going to be a problem. You might get to vote on your lunch break, but it's something that, I mean, I find every election I'm working somewhere. So I always vote absentee, but you don't ever have to use the mail to vote absentee ever. And you shouldn't.
I like what Patty P says. She goes, we should tell everyone to not cast their absentee vote until after the one and only debate Whitmer agreed to on October 13th or whatever. I didn't even know she agreed to a debate. So that's news to me.
Yeah, that had been a story that Whitmer won't do any debates until it's too late. Basically, the Democrats going to get their machine out early.
Which we should talk about too. About how the Democrats.
And Dana Nessel said she won't debate at all.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Amber.
Oh, no. How it seems like the Democrats are so good at playing the game called beat the absentee ballots, and us as Republicans are scrambling to get lit 2 weeks before they're due. So
yeah.
It's sad.
I've heard a lot about campaigns not having even literature for people, and that's a real problem. I don't know about you folks. I don't want the future of my state left up to some campaign hacks. That's why we have made some literature that you can hand out and you can get printed right away. So let me pull this up. If you haven't already seen it, if you visit our humble website, rescuemichigan.com, let's see, why is it not pulled up here? What's going on here? Hold on. Something's going on in StreamYard. Let's get this window open. There we go. If you go to our website, you can just go to this link right here. And we're going to be talking more about Gretchen Whitmer tonight, but you can get your flyers from us. You can download them, print them off all by yourself if you want. You don't need to put a paid for by disclaimer, because if you read it carefully, it doesn't actually say vote for Tudor Dixon or don't vote for Gretchen Whitmer. It doesn't say anything more than any newspaper could say if they were to tell the truth. Patty P says, what's the turnaround time on lit? The proposal flyers are all printed and they are going out. There is now a 2-day turnaround on them. The Whitmer flyers, our print shop has told us, will be done this week, hopefully by middle of the week even. And Patty P or anybody else who's in like the Wayne, Oakland, Macomb County area, if you are in a real hurry to get your flyers, reach out to me and we can even arrange to have you meet with the print shop if that'll save you time.
I just got a big thing of flyers from the print shop too. So nice. Come talk to me and I can get you some flyers if you need them.
Awesome. Yeah, unfortunately, go ahead.
There's a PDF. So
yep, you can get the PDF on our website too. Yeah, unfortunately, the print industry is having the same problems that every other industry is having in terms of supply chain issues and inflation. And so the cost of ink and paper is higher than it's ever been. And they have issues actually getting the stock for the paper even. So, and the campaigns are probably having these same problems, but yeah, you can go to the website, rescuemichigan.com. You can find the flyers there. You can order them there. And hopefully all of them we will have in hand this week. You can have as soon as this week. Cindy says, "Ugh, I know a few Dems that love her." Depending on the Dems, if you say they love her, yeah, there's some people that whose minds you cannot change, and you're just going to waste your time trying. The main thing to do is to knock on doors. You can get your precinct voter file, and people have also been saying there's been some turnaround issues with that. We did catch up on them at last, but we get these from a data guy. I don't just have them all on hand. And he's a campaign guy too, so he's extremely busy, and he's been tough to get a hold of sometimes this week.
And I think this sets a good precedent going into 2024 that, hey, 2 weeks before absentee ballots come out, you shouldn't be requesting your voter file. We should have gotten it, a year ago to set up for this time. And I know that some people maybe knew. I'm new. And now I think going into 2024, we know what to do to really, really get victory for really have the red wave for 2024. So order your voter files, if not now, for 2024 super early, so we're not running into issues.
Yeah, I mean, look, folks, every election cycle we learn things, and all of us at some point we're brand new to this stuff. And one thing is that politics runs on time, and there is nothing you can do to get back lost time. And the reality is the deadlines of elections, of candidate filings, of of your financial disclosures. These are all things that have to be planned in advance. And I'm getting some emails from people who are like, I'm running for school board. Can I get my voter file? And I'm like, yeah, sure. But if you're just now starting to knock on doors, you're too late. I hate to tell you, the union bosses have been knocking on doors all summer. And that's a tough thing to compete for at the last minute. But I want to show you, if anyone hasn't already seen these, if you go to rescuemichigan.com, you can sign up, log in, you can order your voter file, and there's a lot of things you can do with this, folks. In the raw data format, it's got tons and tons and tons of details on every single voter. And then we have a bunch of different tools where, like, for example, if I want to choose, so let's say I'm looking for the general election now, we're past the primary, likely general election voters minus the Democrats, the hardcore Democrats. And it will give you a list of all these people's addresses, names, their turnout likelihood, their party affiliation. You can see it goes from red to gray. There might be a blue one here or there. And phone numbers that you can use to call or text them and reach out to them. And these are all things that any one person can do for hundreds of people in the next 2 months.
Yes.
And if everybody who doesn't want to see a second term of Gretchen Whitmer were to actually just do this in their own neighborhood, talk to the voters, identify who the Whitmer supporters are and ignore them, identify the Dixon supporters and make sure they vote, and talk to the undecided people. There's a propaganda war out there, folks, happening right now. And the Democrats are able, because they have the massive cash advantage, they have a massive media advantage, to change the terms of the discussion. Mm-hmm. And you have to address it. I did a brief show a few nights ago talking about how to address the abortion issue, because they're completely misleading voters about what Whitmer's position on abortion is, what the proposals actually do on abortion, and of course everything else that they're trying to hope that the voters forget about, the lockdowns and everything else. I'm going to talk more about Whitmer in a moment, but first I got a couple of chats. By the way, we're also watching Rumble. If anybody wants to say hello in the Rumble chat, we'll see you there as well. But we are, as usual, streaming on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. So if you don't see the chat I am responding to, it's just probably somewhere else.
So I want to touch base with Roman really fast. Roman Petrov says in 2016, they were promoting a Republican campaign app. Is that gone? No. But they switched campaign apps, and we're working with Sidekick right now. I mean, a couple of different campaigns are working with like i360. I'm personally working with Sidekick, and what we're doing with Sidekick is we're making mass phone calls for different candidates. So you always want to try to touch the voter in different ways: door knocking, lit dropping, mailers, ads, digital ads, text messaging, phone calling. So Sidekick's a really great app to get associated with, to make phone calls. I'm really pushing it for the phone calls right now, with leaving voicemails about who different candidates are. I'm working with a lot of candidates to help get them across the finish line. So feel free to reach out, Roman, to one of us at Rescue and try to get set up with that. Yeah,
the Republican Party is using that app. You're welcome to use it. The one thing I would say that is different with these is that when you get your precinct voter file, you own it. It's your data to work with on an ongoing basis, and you can really get to know your precinct if you take notes. So when you knock on doors, you can click on people on this web page, and you can correct a phone number if it's not there. You can edit the party score. And to answer Patty's question, what GOP score would you consider moderate/independence? The way the party score in our system works is that you get a score from 0 to 100, and that is the percentage likelihood the database thinks that someone's going to vote Republican. So a moderate or independent could score anywhere in the middle, but a 50% score might just mean they don't have much data on that voter, and so they don't know. So likewise, if someone has a score of 90, it doesn't mean that the data thinks they're 90% conservative on every issue. It means they think there's a 90% chance that person will vote Republican just based on things. Barry Doherty says, spoke to 120 golfers Saturday prior to shotgun scramble. Captured audience, distributed a version of Adam's scam. I bet they took off the gory stuff, but that's fine. People didn't know the nuances of the abortion proposal. It hit home, generated lots of discussion. I will make a G-rated version of it because I know you guys are insisting on it. I'm telling you, the R version will be more effective. But if you can't do it, I got another email from someone saying I can't hand that out. It's too offensive. Okay, fine. So there we go.
Oh, another way to like advertise really fast is I'm wearing pins. So I've been wearing my pins everywhere I go, or shirts. So feel free if you can contact local campaigns. Pins are effective. They don't go with everything I wear, but I don't care for the next 2 months how I look. So I don't really care.
You can also get the Rescue Michigan 3 Witches t-shirt. That'll strike up a conversation. And we got a few others in the store too. So those are there as well. But yeah, it is always good to speak up, speak out. Wearing Trump gear always gets people's attention. So lots of things that everyone can do. But yeah, this is the time, people. This is the time to be speaking out in every way you possibly can. Curtis Michael asks, can I get a conservative voter roll for the new 4th Congressional District? Curtis, do me a favor, drop me a line, go to rescuemichigan.com, hit the contact form, and we can talk about it. We can get you voter files in bulk, and they're a lot cheaper per precinct that way. But just, I mean, the 4th Congressional District, we're talking like 400, 500 precincts. So there's a cost to it. But yeah, we can make that happen.
And Leroy Decker says, our campaign in the 29th District, particularly the city of Taylor, a blue-collar Democrat city, been knocking on independent stores, and the response in multiple precincts is 70% leaning toward Republican. It's stunning to say the least.
Excellent.
It doesn't surprise me too much because the Trump America First movement has brought in blue-collar workers into the coalition, and downriver went toward Trump big time. So although we may be losing people in the suburbs who should hopefully be coming back this year and this November, we're gaining a lot of blue collar workers, and the Republican Party's becoming the party of the worker, which I think is going to benefit us in the long run greatly.
Yeah, I mean, just to remind people what you did to all the things.
I see with that is the worker, the working class, doesn't donate as much as the non-working class, I assume, or like the I guess white collar class, and we're running into that a lot with the campaigns I'm dealing with, is the money.
Well, maybe they'll knock on doors then. But yeah, I mean, money is tight, but you know what, folks, it's going to be a lot tighter if we lose this one.
Exactly.
Zoe Lee asks, how would a program know how a person will maybe vote, how someone voted as private information? Not as private as you might think, Zoe. Hate to tell you this. But data brokers pull from all kinds of sources. They buy information from Facebook, they buy it from YouTube, they buy it from Google. All these social networks are selling your data. That's where money comes from. There's also a lot of things in public records. You might not know this, but which presidential primaries you voted in was a public record. Those are out. That's hard data that anyone can acquire. And then they model it demographically based on all kinds of other things that you can get from the public. Demographic information, income information, neighborhood information. These things all tell people things. I remember one data set I was buying from a company some years ago. They actually had a field for how many religious magazines a household is subscribed to, because the companies that were distributing those magazines sold that data. You may not like that, but that's the way it is. And nobody has better data than the Democrats do. So right. we're trying to keep up with that, but you can bet, and they do it with everything else. You know, they do door-to-door operations. Previous campaigns might have identified you. If you told somebody in the past, I'm voting Republican, these things go into a file.
Well, their get out the vote effort in general just collects data.
Yeah.
So that's their huge get out the vote. It's all data.
Yeah. And, the amount of granular data that they have on you, that the government has on you, that many different corporate entities have on you, is terrifying. But at the same time, this is the sort of data that you need to be gathering, you need to be collecting, and we at Rescue Michigan are doing that so that we don't lose in this battle. And as much as we may hate this status quo where no one has privacy, we have to fight in the same battlefield. And that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, one of the things I tell people too is when you're knocking on doors, even before you knock on the door, just looking at the house will often tell you something about the people behind the door. You'll see military imagery, police imagery, religious imagery, education things. I mean, hunting gear, fishing gear, all these things tell a story about the voters. And these are all things worth noting too. Even if they're not home, they might indicate any house with American flag on is probably Republican. Yep. So, yeah, there are lots of ways to get to know some things about voters. There's some other things that we can do besides door knocking. We've talked about dropping literature off. Amber, we were talking before the show, and you mentioned talking about, you can do events in your neighborhood.
Yes. Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So even today, I approached somebody at church who I know lives in an area, and I go, hey, it would be great if you could host, and I know she's like-minded, a meet and greet for school board candidates in your area. I know some really great candidates, and they just kind of need to outreach to a different sector, people that you might know in your area. And she was all about it. And it's just like making the ask. If you make the ask to say, hey, I have some really great candidates, I would love just to have a house to do it out of, and you invite your friends to see these candidates, and then from there it sparks their friends to have house parties and their friends. And it's not something that costs a lot of money. It's putting out cheese and crackers and coffee and inviting the candidate to come speak. And if some donations get their way, that's great, but more so you're touching other people. And it's a fun and easy way to just really get engaged with different campaigns and different people, because I feel like sometimes we're always in our own cliques, and it's hard to break out of the clique unless you ask people, because they're not going to volunteer necessarily or know to volunteer. So I think that breaking out is going to be a key to helping us win now and in the future.
Yeah, everything in politics is geographical, and in the real world, we all have our talents, and for some people it's writing a letter to the newspaper, and for some people it's knocking on doors, and for some people it's throwing a party. But we all have to do whatever our talents allow us to do. One thing that will not do anything is blabbing on social media, folks. You're just talking in a closed room with either people that feel the exact same way you do, or people that completely feel the exact opposite, and nothing ever gets done that way. But I will share with you guys something about Gretchen Whitmer you all might not know. It didn't make it onto our flyer. I tried to work this in, but I thought I wanted to share this with everybody. This is, let me find it here. When we think about Gretchen Whitmer, the first thing that comes to mind is her lockdowns and all of the lunacy that followed, the complete destruction of the school system, the complete destruction of public health, social isolation, destroying businesses, and all the rest. But there's something that happened even before then in 2019, and it's such an illustrative story. So I want to show you guys this. This was kind of a strange story. It didn't get a lot of coverage, but something that certainly might be worth bringing up to somebody, especially if you're talking to a moderate who's not going to be interested in the red meat stuff. This is a story about Gretchen Whitmer vetoing compensation for the wrongly convicted. And when you understand where the story came from and why she did this, it really tells you everything you need to know about what motivates Gretchen. I hope that the Dixon campaign manages to work this into the debate somehow, because this tells you what Gretchen Whitmer is at her essence. So here's the story. It's from the mass media, so it's going to be incomplete, but here's what it says. Back in 2016, by the way, this story came out in the middle of 2019, so we're talking pre-COVID. Back in 2016, the Michigan legislators passed the Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act, which required Michigan to pay $50,000 to wrongfully imprisoned Michigan residents for each year spent in prison. Ex-inmates would make the claim through a lawsuit filed against the state in the Michigan Court of Claims. To date, this is in 2019, approximately $6.5 million had been appropriated for the fund, and as of early March this year, the fund had a balance of $323,800, according to the House Fiscal Agency analysis. In other words, the fund was broke. And in Michigan, if the fund is broke, they can't pay. There's no recourse. In fact, I was working in the legislature at the time, and someone floated the idea of, can a court just garnish the state treasury? And the answer we got back from lawyers was no. The Constitution does not let the state spend any money at all without an appropriation from the legislature. It's designed to protect against fiscal insolvency or what have you, but that was the outcome was. If the legislature doesn't appropriate the money can't be taken, period. So Representative Steve Johnson sponsored a bill to appropriate $10 million to the fund, and it passed with unanimous support from the legislature. 100%, every single Democrat and Republican voted to give the wrongly convicted prisoners the money owed to them. So guess what Gretchen Whitmer did? She vetoed it because, according to the story, she did not like the way the legislature passed the bill. I'll tell you guys what that really meant in a second, because the answer is going to surprise you. Governor Whitmer made budget provisions that would have allocated the funding through an appropriations bill, left unsaid months later. The governor's proposed fiscal 2019 and 2020 budgets did indeed include the $10 million, and she stated she would support an appropriation of money to the fund in a supplemental appropriations bill or a general appropriations bill months later. By the way, this is also disingenuous, and this quote from her here as well. The governor says, "We have been transparent throughout the process as our initial recommendation included the funding as part of the supplemental." Again, left unsaid, months and months later. So Steve Johnson points out she ought to be ashamed of herself for playing political games with people's lives. If it was up to me, I would say the first vote we take Tuesday is a veto override, but we'll see what the speaker decides. The speaker decided to chicken out, sadly, because, again, this was a bill that passed unanimously. And I think I heard like a year or two later, I think it was either Majority Leader Shirkey or maybe it was the House Speaker. One of them said they wished they had overrode the veto, but they didn't. So the prisoners did not get their money for another several months. So a lawyer for these wrongfully convicted Michiganders stated, "It's horrific to think we could go to trial and win, and then there's no money to pay this man. He'll be waiting for politicians to finish playing their games." One of his clients was in prison for 45 years on armed robbery and murder charges that he was never guilty of. How do you put a price on being wrongfully convicted and spending any time in prison, let alone 45 years? How does $50,000 each year come even close to compensating you for that? So the state owed this guy $2.2 million. And Gretchen Whitmer made him wait several additional months. Let me tell you why Whitmer vetoed this bill that passed unanimously in the House and Senate. There is a thing in Michigan law that if a bill contains an appropriation, it is said to be referendum proof, meaning if you pass a controversial piece of legislation and say a multi-million-dollar interest wants to spend multi-millions of dollars to put it on a referendum, they can't do that if there is an appropriation in the bill. So when Michigan passed its right to work law in 2012, guess what they did? They threw in a small appropriation so that the union bosses couldn't put it on referendum. So when Whitmer was campaigning for office, guess what she promised? I will veto any bill that's not a budget bill and has an appropriation in it. And because Whitmer was so obsessed with proving that she's tough and she's strong and she won't be pushed around by the legislature, she said, I said I would veto any spending bill, no matter how worthwhile it was. So she vetoed it. So she made the wrongfully convicted people wait months and months for compensation because she had to prove she could stick to a campaign talking point. That's the kind of person Gretchen Whitmer is.
So you're telling me you're telling me Gretchen's a woman of principle?
I'm telling you, Gretchen Whitmer is fundamentally insecure. And she has spent the entire past 4 years trying to prove to planet Earth that she can be tough. Because at the end of the day, she knows she's been in way over her head. She knows she's been the worst governor the state's ever had, has no clue what to do about COVID-19, and wrecked our state from top to bottom for the last 4 years. And even before all that happened,
she's going to be a presidential candidate. So
she was 14 years in the legislature, accomplishing absolutely zip, nothing, didn't do any one thing at all. She was in the minority the entire 14 years, and she just burned up with hatred for our state. And this was her way of proving how smart and tough she was, holding the wrongfully convicted's long overdue compensation hostage for her talking points. Just disgusting, just shameful. So there you go, folks. There's a story you won't read about in the Detroit News or the Detroit Free Press or any other mass media publication for that matter, because they have no interest in telling the voters the truth about Gretchen Whitmer. But maybe some of you can. So there you go. That's my story for tonight. What else we got, guys? I don't know that there's a whole lot more to talk about, honestly, other than the election, the candidates, the campaigns.
Shame.
Well, I'd like to talk about just briefly what has happened at the national level, where the feds are apparently raiding top Trump supporters nationwide.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Yeah, then that the state attorney general of New York has indicted Bannon on charges of basically running a scam pack. There are literally, thousands of scam packs running throughout the country that aren't held to the same standard as, the one that Steve Bannon was, loosely associated with. So
yeah, I'm not even sure that that's a fair description too, because when people say, "Oh, there's a charity is taking money," charities have a lot of costs, and to build the wall, we're talking about we build the wall, right?
Yep, and they did build the wall. They
Yeah.
actually did,
Yes.
fulfill what they said they were going to do. But apparently there was, there was a campaign email where it's like 100% of the money will go toward building the wall or something like that, and they're using that to say that it was a fraud campaign. And Bannon, even though he was only kind of tangentially associated, like speaker at an event, he wasn't really the main guy behind it. But just from him being associated with it, they're trying him and they're charging him and making him do the perp walk right in front of the media. It's kind of like a humiliation ritual to indicate to Trump supporters that if you're too outspoken, if you're too bold, we will come for you and you will be locked behind bars.
Oh yeah, and this has gone on from the get-go with Paul Manafort and just countless numbers of Trump appointees, Trump attorneys. It's all lawfare, and it's all intended to deprive Donald Trump of his right to legal counsel, of his right to staff, and everything else. It's what the name of the game is all about. And of course, this all went down in the Southern District of New York, which is like the most politically corrupt circuit, other than maybe DC itself. And as Alan Dershowitz likes to say, you could indict a ham sandwich if you're motivated to. And that's what these rogue prosecutors have been doing. It's really obscene.
And Adam, do you think, or both of you, do you guys think that they're going to indict Trump before 2024? Do you think they will formally levy charges against him in an attempt to try to deny him from being able to run from office in 2024 for president again?
Absolutely.
I don't know if they're going to, I don't know if they're going to let it proceed all the way through the election. I think the agenda is to dirty him up as much as possible. If they were to actually make it so that Trump could not run for office, then they'd be contending with Ron DeSantis, who's an even bigger problem for the establishment. So I think they're gonna keep Trump. Just as same with all the fraud impeachments. The idea is just to keep him as dirty as possible.
And another story that I saw was that in New Mexico there was a guy who was convicted of a misdemeanor for being in the January 6th rally. Didn't even go into the Capitol. Just that he was there and peacefully protesting, and a high-profile guy, Cowboys for Trump, rides around on a horse everywhere and is kind of noteworthy. He was a county commissioner in a county in New Mexico, and a judge actually banned him from office and banned him for running for public office ever again, using whatever language, I think it's in the 14th Amendment, that says that any individual guilty of insurrection against the country cannot run for office. They used that and applied it to him, booted him from office effective immediately for misdemeanor trespassing in relation to January 6th. So I think that they're getting desperate, and then they're trying to build this up to set the precedent to get Trump, to ban him from running again, because I think that they realize that's going to be very, very difficult for them to win against Trump in 2024, considering how bad the country's gotten and how much, doubled gas prices, all the different things, energy prices going through the roof, and it shows no signs of stopping. There may be
it's only been 2 years. It's going to be a lot worse than another two.
It may be a full-blown depression before 2024 runs around. So I really do think that this is leading to them charging Trump, putting him in front of a DC jury, getting the conviction so that they can ban him from being able to run again in 2024.
Well, if anything, this election cycle taught Michiganders, it's you can get kicked off a ballot by the Board of Canvassers. It will be shut down by every court and not make it to the Supreme Court fast enough to get on the ballot. So why wouldn't it just constantly happen? Because we don't have anything to stop it. We had a really good candidates that got kicked off the ballot that really could be viable against Whitmer right now, and they weren't on purpose, I think.
So. Well, I mean, it may be sabotage, but I think the buck
It is
stops at
sabotage.
A,
It may
the
be. It is.
B, the consultants. No, well, you know what, folks? When I file paperwork for a client, I check every single signature in the voter file to see if there's multiples, duplicates. I mean, that is a job. That's a job that Unlock Michigan was able to do. They're able to scan and process every single signature. Is it a huge pain? Yes, but it can be done. And yeah, Patty P says they messed up their petitions. That, I mean, might be on their consultant. Maybe there's legal options. That reminds me. So there was something that happened this week. Oh, there was a data breach at another Republican consulting firm, i360. I guess they are looking to sue their platform or whoever it was that leaked their data. So don't know where that's going to go. But just to address some other comments on here, Ben Joseph says, I talked to General Kellogg about this. He said there's nothing in the Constitution to keep Trump from running, even if he is indicted. And he cannot indict within 60 days of any election, according to General Kellogg. Yeah, but that doesn't matter, because what they can do is just drag the proceedings out for months and months and months. And that's what they want to do, is they won't have a headline about it every single day on an ongoing basis. That's, I think, the number one thing for them, is generating bad press and making Trump toxic for all of the Republican establishment types too. So they all try to distance themselves from him, because the establishment knows that their people won't fight. On Rumble, Hanzy1PK says, never say 100% donations will go to project unless you've got the money to do administrative costs on your own. All it takes is 1 cent not to be used for the project to get you. Yeah, maybe. And again, I don't know what the internal details were with that We Build the Wall thing, but again, if they want to go after them, they'll go after them, and that's something you just have to accept. People, if the deep state wants to go after you, they will. And that's the lesson we should all be taking away. I think they charged somebody with January 6th that wasn't even in Washington that day. They said, like, oh, he was organizing them or something.
Yeah, that was I think the Proud Boys founder. They said that, because he was involved he was chatting with people who were involved, that means he's like he was providing some sort of support for terrorism, and has been charged for January 6th because of chat transcripts he had with people who were there.
And even if the charges are bunk, I mean, we just saw this with that disgraceful Carter Page judge throwing out his lawsuit, pointing out that the FBI lied on their warrants, the FBI lied in their affidavits, all of that stuff. And then the judge throws out the lawsuit anyway and says, the government just can lie to you, can lie about you, can charge you on false pretenses whenever they want. And if you're 100% innocent, what are you going to do? I mean, you might win ultimately. Maybe this guy can appeal his case to the U.S. Supreme Court and get it thrown out. Maybe. How much money is that going to cost? I mean, all we can do, and I saw Petty P says we're doomed. Don't doom guys, no matter what. I mean, the part you have to realize with that Biden Nazi rally he had a couple weeks ago is that the reason they're doing all this stuff is because of how afraid they are. They are that afraid of the American people. And they're trying to do a show of terror and a show of force and a show of propaganda. And it's frankly sad to me to see how many people on our side are believing the propaganda too. I mean, I'm getting some people who are saying, oh yeah, I'm a Republican, but I heard Twitter's too extreme on abortion. Like, why are you listening to people that have lied to you about everything else in the universe? Mm-hmm. And, it's just the way that goes. I saw there was another quotes from, someone was talking about there's been a big propaganda surge in Ukraine recently, and people are like, even the people who are trying to be neutral about this are like, they're really buying the doom and gloom stories. Like, people, you just got to get through it.
All the Dems were tweeting.
It's just the way it goes. Yeah, Patty P says all the Dems were tweeting about 9/11 today. It was weird. Yeah, it is especially weird because they're the ones that have been trivializing 9/11 for the past 2 years, saying January 6th was worse. It's totally obscene. I mean,
now remembering 9/11 is about equivocating it to January 6th. So anytime they talk about 9/11, it's to keep it out there as something that they can use as a reference point when they talk about January 6th.
People should be counter tweeting on all these things. In fact, I'm going to probably do that later tonight when I'm going to go through and find some politicians doing that, Patty. They should all be just ashamed of themselves, exhuming the bodies of the innocent people killed on 9/11 for their own political purposes. They have no business tweeting about 9/11. They're disgusting. They're sick. Evil people. So.
Now, one more thing we should cover is we have an update on the lawsuit that we talked about last week.
Oh.
So yeah, it's in the private chat. So pull that up, Adam.
Yeah, hold on.
A judge has denied a temporary restraining order in Macomb GOP's effort to toss results of the 2020 presidential election. So not off to a good start.
Imagine my shock.
Yeah, the decertification lawsuit, the one that was going to supposedly solve all of our problems, the courts are not going along with it. So I don't, I've heard that a judge's decision cannot be questioned in any case,
Yeah. Well,
regardless of where they stand ideologically. But this does not seem like it's going to be entertained by the courts.
Yeah. For those of you who don't get what Shane was referring to there, we had a state convention recently where a lot of people were going around saying that a judge has issued an order relating to
and it is the law. Because the judge has said this, it is the law. That was the argument.
And two wrongs don't make a right, folks. Yes, this decision is appealable, but it's not going to be very likely. Not likely, because the whole point of what's called a preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order means the same thing. It means this case is so urgent that you need to essentially rule in our favor until we can hear the case, is what that basically says. So the judge says nope, because according to him, the group has not demonstrated any imminent irreparable harm or a likelihood of success on the merits of their claims. So the appeals court's going to probably just say the same thing, because the judge's decision shows that it's not likely, because the decision in a temporary restraining order requires that you show a likelihood of being able to prevail on the merits. So they're going to say, well, the judge said you didn't, so he probably isn't going to rule in your favor. So that's what happened there. Temporary restraining order denied. That does not mean the lawsuit is thrown out. There will still be more going on that. Whitmer and Benson, the judge also noted the suit was filed on September 2nd, but Whitmer and Benson had yet to be served with the legal documents notifying them of it. He gave the attorneys until tomorrow to serve the defendants. Let's see if they even managed to do that. But there you go. So, off to a bad start. Oh, speaking of course, I forgot to mention, it's kind of a small blip, but as we predicted, and granted it's an extremely easy prediction, but yes, the abortion and election proposals were ordered by the state Supreme Court to the ballot. So there you go. Barry Doherty says, were the 2020 ballots destroyed or was that stopped? I don't know. That's a good question. Have you guys heard anything about that? I think we're just past the 22-month federal deadline. There may be, I think there's a later state deadline that they still have to adhere to, but a lot of these lawsuits, if you read what this lawsuit was all about, this one that we just looked at, they're not even talking about anything that relates to absentee ballots or in-person ballots for that matter. They're talking about the voting machines changing the results of the election, which all those voting machines were long since reset when we had the primary a couple months ago, and there was even a few special elections in May and in 2021. So there's nothing to even be retained there.
And even if the data was retained, who's to say it's ever going to be investigated? Considering who we have in charge of government right now. So I'm not saying that we should forget about the 2020 election fraud, but you have to come to terms with the fact that they got away with it, and we have to focus on trying to make sure it never happens again, rather than just dwelling on what they did that was unfortunately successful in all the fraud that they committed in 2020. We can't be caught sitting on our hands again. We can't be demoralized because they got away with it once and think that it's hopeless. We have to look forward and prevent them from doing it in 2022 or in 2024, or we're totally screwed. Yeah.
On YouTube, Stephen Richards says, I lost my business from the lockdown. I had a computer repair shop in downtown Flint. Now they want me to pay back $15,000 from unemployment because I didn't claim the unemployment as earned income. We all need help. I barely have $15, let alone $15,000. What a mess. I'm so sorry to hear that, brother. That's awful. And I don't know what to tell you. What they did with those unemployment claims and those PPP loans and all these other stupid games they played was disgusting. And
what you do is you tell your friends and you tell your story, and you constantly tell your story, and you do not let people forget. There are millions of stories like yours And I feel like it's not out in the open right now to share enough to realize that this affected so many people and so many families and so many lives, because it was 2 years ago. And it just was the perfectly timed catastrophic event to just forget about. So please tell everybody.
And keep in mind, folks, also, if Whitmer gets reelected, the lockdowns are coming back.
Oh, they got away with it.
The only reason they ever let up was because the election was coming up. Hands 1PK on Rumble says Tudor's abortion is not too extreme, just much harder for electability. Well, again, it comes down to making the argument to the right people and framing it the right way and pointing out Whitmer's position. And we talked about this on the show a few days ago, so you can look at that on I think it's on all 3 channels. But yeah, Whitmer's position is partial birth abortions should be legal. Dismemberment abortion should be legal. Letting the baby die after surviving an abortion should be legal. That's pretty extreme to me, folks. And that's extreme to most voters. Most voters are okay with abortion for like the first week or two when the thing is just beginning to develop. But once it's a baby that can feel pain and has a heartbeat and has eyes and toes, their position really, really changes on that. And you have to point out this proposal does all of that and much more. So again, it's an information war, and we have 2 months and really a lot less, just a few weeks to get this message out in our communities.
Yeah, that's key, is those proposals. Like, you can say all day long, like, you know, Tudor's not getting her information out there. Well, we need to battle these proposals because people are going to say yes when they get their absentee ballot. They're more likely to say yes on stuff, and it's just a shame. So vote no on everything. Vote no. And in Oakland County, we're also battling an RTA transit issue. Shane, do you want to touch on that really fast?
Yeah, they're doing a 0.95 mil property tax hike to fund transit in Oakland County. No opt-outs are allowed. It's basically a scheme to tax the suburbs into giving more, of a transit system for inner cities. So funneling resources, wealth redistribution from rural, more Republican, conservative voters to reward their constituents. And it's a bad deal for many different reasons. Transit's completely cratered since COVID, and it was already extremely non-viable back then. Now it's billions in the red. So check out stoptaxingourproperty.com for more information about that. And we have glossy flyers now. Going to be getting that out to the community. So even if you do not like the top of the ticket, as I'm sure many people listening aren't too thrilled about it and how the campaigns are being run, there's a lot of good stuff down ballot, stopping these various tax hikes and abortion mandates and election fraud enabling laws. That's stuff that you can talk to people about, and that will resonate upward on the ballot. School board candidates, local candidates, county candidates. There's something for everyone to get out there and talk to people about. So no excuses to be on the sidelines. This is one of the, every election is the most important election of our lifetime, but this is probably the most important election in Michigan, because if all these ballot initiatives don't go our way, it could be doomed for the entire state. We could be California East in no time if all these ballot proposals go through and we sit on the sidelines being demoralized. We can't allow that to happen.
Well, actually, so proposal 1 is going to be the term limits. Proposal 2 is going to be the election where there's no ID necessary to vote. You can't have an independent audit. You can't have, the increased ballot boxes, but no ID to vote in proposal 2. And proposal 3 is the abortion up until 9 months and the transgender reconstructive surgery without parental consent. So those are the 3 proposals on the ballot, and how they're listed as proposal 1, term limits, proposal 2, election, proposal 3, abortion.
Yeah, and to Paula's point, I would never refer to it as reproductive freedom proposal. No, it's not. It's the baby killing and child mutilation proposal. Stephen Richard says, I wish all of us in the situation could sue for damages. They keep doing weird telephone hearings over it, and when I ask for a real trial or dismissal, they just make a new hearing. I don't know what to tell you, buddy. It's really rotten that it's not easy for anyone to get access to the legal system in this country. And the government, of course, knows all the ins and outs of that system and has all the lawyers in the world for free. And yeah, all we can possibly do is get rid of these incompetent, deranged sociopaths that have been running our state for the last 4 years.
And to Shane's point, we're actually going to have more extreme laws than California. So we're going to be worse than California.
Yeah.
For election, at least, which is
this will be the most extreme abortion law in the country.
Yeah.
And that again is another thing that we have to get that message out. This is not partially pro-life or partially pro-abort. They pulled a scam in the language to say, well, you can actually limit late-term abortions, except no, you can't, because it says all of the abortionist has to do is say it's for the mental health of the mother, and then they can do late-term abortions, dismemberment abortions, all that stuff.
We're pretty much a trial run for the country right now to show how stupid we could be as, citizens, I think. So get out there and talk to people.
Yeah, Zoe Lee says Dixon wants forced birth for child rape victims, and her wanting to ban birth control is too extreme in the other direction. Well, on the latter point, that's just completely untrue, Zoe. And again, this is where our side needs to not just blindly accept the propaganda and lies of the opposition. And as for forced birth for child rape victims, let me ask you, Zoe, if it's okay to kill a developing baby in a womb at 8 months old because of the age of the mother or the condition of the father, then what value does life have at all then? If it's okay to rip a baby up limb from limb at 9 months old just because the father's a rapist, what life does the baby have at all? I mean, if you're pro-life, it's because the child has rights. You can't just say, okay, well, the dad's, and by the way, alleged criminal. You know how long a case takes on rape? Probably more than 9 months most of the time. If abortion was illegal except in cases of rape, you know what you would have? You'd have a whole lot of false accusations of rape against a whole lot of men in this state from women that don't want to have a baby and don't care about the legal status of the father. And that's terrible. That's dangerous. And again, these are points that we have to make because the media certainly won't. Zoe says abortion isn't normally that late. Well, then why are the Democrats putting it on the ballot, Zoe? Why do the Democrats care so much about late-term abortions if that's not normally what happens? They chose the language to be as extreme as humanly possible because they want those babies dead. And if you've ever seen testimony of these abortion doctors, they're into killing babies. We played a clip in the beginning of one of them where the abortionist actually says, she describes what they call dilation and extraction abortions. Yeah, we just dilate the cervix, then we just tear the baby out bit by bit.
And think about it. Think about that, just a handful of years ago, there were no or virtually no transgender children. But then, all these different, this movement gets normalized, the laws get changed, and now it's being promoted everywhere, and you see it more and more, and it's becoming commonplace. And once dismemberment, late-term abortions are legal, you're going to see more of them. And as a matter of fact, I think they'll probably be encouraged because those baby parts can be sold on the market for billions and billions of dollars. So there's an industry driving this, and it's more diabolical than most people even realize.
And let's face it, this is our tax dollars. I mean, I don't care how you feel about abortion, but the thing that gets me every time is my tax dollars go towards this. Federal tax dollars go towards this, and that's wrong.
Yep. Zoe Lee says, are you for child support starting an abortion? Sure, but that's not what's on the ballot. What's on the ballot is every kind of late-term abortion and all forms of abortion possible. And also, by the way, the right of a child to have their sexual organs chopped off by a doctor without their parents' knowledge or consent. Stephen Richards says, shout out to Jeff Phillips. He was over to visit me and my wife the other night. Hope he gets his internet fixed. I assume that means he can be back on the show. Yeah, he was a good guest. I've known Jeff for many years. He was a great colleague and coworker in Lansing too. Be happy to have him back on. He was actually the guy that suggested to me that bit I mentioned earlier in the show about how it's amazing that a court can't garnish the treasury to pay these wrongfully convicted people. But that was what he discovered.
And he could cook a mean barbecue in the Capitol.
Yeah. Barry says slippery slope to infanticide. Yeah, and that's the issue, people, is if you don't have a definition of when life begins, you don't have a definition of when rights begin. And that's something that we just as a country decided was never important, to define when you become a living person who has rights. And that's really dangerous, especially because in this proposal, it also limits the ability to investigate the killings of babies after they were born too. That is also in there. Yeah, Carolyn says they are mad, evil scientists. Seriously, it feels like we're in a sci-fi movie. We have got to stop this craziness. I agree, Carol, and I hope all of you will bust your tails for the next 2 months, because that's all we can do. We have really less than 2 months left. So I would encourage everybody, first off, call a friend and schedule some time to go out knocking on doors. You can buy lit from us. You can download and print lit from us. There's no excuse, folks. You can get voter files from us.
Type out your own synopsis of everything going on and hand it out.
Yeah, get a phone book. Go to a local GOP headquarters office. Call a candidate, a campaign. They're all desperate for help. They're all desperate for help. Zoe says, years ago, I had 2 miscarriages. With the laws in some states now, I could have went to jail for having a DNC afterwards. It's all too much both ways. Well, again, Zoe, what's on the ballot is the one extreme, not to let lawmakers decide. It's we want to ban, we want to allow every single kind of abortion possible. I'd also point out as well that there's a whole there's a whole industry of liars in the radical left that just completely lie about what the abortion laws are and say that what they call entropic pregnancies, which really means a miscarriage. That's not an abortion.
Right.
And this is a tough issue for people, and certainly as a man, it's probably not me the one that should be saying it, because it's a horrible thing, and childbirth is very traumatic and can be dangerous. But if the baby inside you doesn't make it, then it's not an abortion anymore. And that's not the same thing at all. But they just lie about that. AOC lies about it. They all lie about it.
And they give the media coverage to do so.
Yeah. And they're also lying about Dixon's position on that as well, because she actually did say she supports exceptions for the life of the mother. But again, the Democrats and the media never let the truth get in the way of their narrative. So they just lie about it completely. Well, hey, folks, we've been going an hour. It's been kind of a doom pill show, honestly, talking about all this stuff. But the most important thing really, really, really is emphasizing to all you guys, you got to do all that you can. We're running out of time.
There's no time. Yeah, exactly. There's no time.
So get your flyers. If you don't get them from us, you won't hurt my feelings. Make your own. I wonder, has anyone heard anything more from Brian Kelly's group? Is going to do something about these. And the website looks the same as it did a week ago. I don't know, but I guess he's doing something. Some other people are doing something. Some pro-life groups are doing things. And as I've said, with all the pro-life groups, I think they really need to be not trying to downplay that bit about the child sexual mutilation part. That's a whole other topic that they just rolled into there casually because it's all part of their radical anti-birth agenda, which is what a big part of this all is, by the way, folks. The transgender thing and the abortion thing are not completely distinct.
Carol Wynn says that there's going to be a rally at the Capitol on Tuesday at noon until 3. So thank you, Carol.
If you don't live in Lansing, don't go. I'm sorry, folks. All these rallies in Lansing and rallies in Washington, they're not going to make any difference. Nobody is in Lansing. They're on summer recess. They're not technically on summer recess anymore, but they're not having any votes. There's only like 1 day of voting for the whole month of September. If you spend a day going to Lansing, driving how many hours to get there and back, to wave a sign, to be in a media story that nobody will read, nobody will remember, that's time you're spending away from knocking on doors.
What's the day of voting that they're there? Do you know?
I think it's I can look it up. It's different for the House and the Senate. Let me see what my sources are saying here. Hold on. I'm going to have to dig this up. Let's see the day and the... Hold on. I got to scroll through a bunch of text here to find it.
Dwayne says these people care more about puppies than human babies. That is very true.
The 21st and the 28th are the House's days, and the 20th is the Senate day. So those are the only days that they're even in session. And even when they are in session, folks, I used to work in. Oh, he says that's the one with Ryan and Pat Kolbeck. Oh, that's right, that one. Yeah, that one. And there's all kinds of other
Well, maybe it'll be
luminaries.
lit there to pass out for doors that you can do after 3 p.m. when you leave Lansing and go home to your, doors. Because door
Maybe,
knocking is really effective 4 to 8. And so it's
maybe
phone
I'll,
calling.
maybe I'll give you that. Maybe if they're going to have literature there, ask them, Carol, ask Pat Colbeck or Ryan Kelly or some organizer. There's a whole bunch of people speaking there. Are they going to have material for me to take home? Are they going to have signs for me to take home? Because if not, I mean, I get the appeal of rallies. People like to do them. They like to feel like getting together makes a difference. The reality is, folks, I worked in Washington. I've worked in Lansing. We see people rallying, especially when they're on a cause we don't support, like pro-abort or whatever. I'm just like, I'm glad they're here, not in our district.
Right.
Because all they're doing is taking time away from that.
Well, there's like road
Huh?
rallies and stuff that, like, we hold out signs that say "Go vote."
Maybe here and there, maybe to get new people engaged for once or something like that. I'm not saying they have no purpose at all. And certainly the one after the lockdown started that kind of snapped people out of it was, I thought, really important. But as a general rule, and especially during election season, the way to make a difference is in your precinct, people, engaging your neighbors, not going with a bunch of like-minded people to yell at empty buildings and at the Capitol.
Right.
So, all right. On that note, thanks everybody for joining us. We will, I'm sure, be talking a lot more over these next few days and weeks as things only get crazier and crazier. So, Shane, Amber, anything you guys want to plug before we go?
Go to local fundraisers. Check out fundraisers. They have prices on them that could say like $50 or $100. If you can't afford it, message the people, say, hey, I want to come support it. I can't afford that price. And I'm sure that people will just love any sort of support. Support your local candidates, school board on up. It is so, so important. County commission seats, local level stuff really affects you. So please go to some fundraisers and just support your local candidates. Mailers need to go out, and they need funds for mailers to beat the absentee ballot chase. So
yeah,
that's my.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, whatever the other campaigns are doing, Tudor and DePerno and Caramo, we've been saying since February of last year that our state's going to be won or lost on precinct canvassing, on grassroots leadership.
Yep.
And this is the crunch time. This is what we have to do. And we can't control what they do. We can't control what candidates for state reps are doing. We can only do what we can do to make a difference in our neighborhoods. So that's it for this week, guys. As always, thanks again for all you do for liberty. And until next time, peace out.